Hi, this is Ollie at the Crafty Whisk, and I'm so glad you're back. It is part 2 today of the gift card cards. The last video was part 1, which is this one here. Which was really cute. And today we're going into part 2. And then the next video will be part 3. I couldn't do them all into one video because it was just too long. They all fit into standard size envelopes, as I went into in the last video. So let's get started. This one's really adaptable. Once you've learnt the basic skills, you can change it to any size card that you need, any size, any shape. I'm just going to do the 2 standard sizes today, which is the side fold and the top fold. So this one's the side fold, which you start off with an 8.5 by 5.5 and you score it down the centre. You need to have the mechanism the same colour, and it's 3 inches by 5.5. You score it at 1/2 inch, 1.5 and 2.5 inches. And this will form the mechanism in the centre of the card, which will hold the gift card. It doesn't have to be the same colour as the card, but if you want it to look seamless, then that's the way to do it. So you do a mountain fold and 2 valley folds. So score and burnish them well. And you end up with this little piece. And the gift card will sit into the mountain fold. And you can either cut it out using the sentiment strip dies or with a craft knife, just like we did in part 1. And just like in part 1, if you're using the die, it will sit half on and half off the cardstock. You can use any die cutting machine. I'm using the Spellbinders. But you can use your Big Shot or Gemini or any of the other electronic ones. And that gives you this little piece here. So now to secure it so that your gift card doesn't fall out, we need to put either glue or very strong tape. So I'm using the red liner tape on the sides. Now because I'm using this in a standard side fold card, we put 2 lines of the double-sided tape or red line tape to make sure the gift card won't fall out. so that it goes right up to where we've done the cut. So we're just going to remove the backing strips, and then we're going to secure it down. And burnish it well, because we don't want these two coming apart at all. And that's the basic mechanism. And those two flaps are what is going to be securing it to the center of the card. So again, we're going to use the red liner tape, or a very strong double-sided tape. I do recommend using something very strong here because it does have to put up with quite a bit of strain. And make sure you burnish that tape down really well. Now the stamp set I'm using today is from Mama Elephant, called Sweet Treat. It's really adorable, a little llama with some sweets I've chosen today. I thought it was really apt for a gift card. The little sentiment is a little treat for my sweet friend. And I've left the colouring in the video this time, and I have sped it up quite a bit. Because I know some of you actually like to watch the colouring in process, so I do include it in some of my videos, but not all. This one was quite a quick one. And I do put the colours I've used on the screen for you. And I don't colour the llama in completely. All I've done is gone right around the edges with a really, really pale colour. And I've just coloured his face and ears in. So it just, doing it this way, I've just sort of not left him completely white, but given him a tiny bit of colour. And then with the lollies, I've only used one colour per lolly, but I've gone around the edges of the lollies 2 or 3 times around the edges, and then just the centre once. So it looks like the edges are darker and the centre is paler. So I've done that rather than going in with 2 or 3 different shades of the same colour family. And that's a different way of shading if you don't have an extensive range of colours. And it gives the same effect, or a similar effect anyway. And I think it ends up looking quite sweet. No pun intended. And I'm just using a white gel pen just to highlight around the sweets. In my one that I end up using, because this one didn't dry in time, I actually forgot to do that. And here I'm just using the Ranger Glossy Accents, which is, it's like a gel substance that dries, but it ends up making things look really glossy. And it looks like they're wrapped in cellophane, once you've used this and once it's dry. It gives a really, really cool effect. It's good for spectacles, and in this case, cellophane wrapped lollies, cherries, things like that. See, it's pretty cool. So I did prepare one earlier, which I'll use. And I'm using the combo circle dies from Mama Elephant, which I've used the rectangles before. And I've cut 2 out, and I'll be placing them together and then off-centering them, which gives a sort of like a scallop effect, but a different kind of scallop effect. And you can use 2 different colours, which is what I've done in the past in a previous video, but here I've used the same colour. And then I've also used the circle die that comes in the set, and it has a stitched effect around the edge. And I've just used a creamy colour, which I thought looked nice against the pink, and it comes in the same set. And I'm trying to show you here the stitched effect. It's very subtle, very small, but it's really pretty. And I'm just going to pop him up onto some foam tape. And I've kept this card quite simple. Clean and simple, I think, is the term that we use. Although clean and simple doesn't always mean quick and easy, at least not for me. The planning process can take quite a while. But the effects are really, really stunning with the clean and simple cards, I find. You don't need a whole lot of tizzying sometimes to make a card look really effective. And in part 3, I show you an alternative to using double-sided foam tape as well, so that things hold up better in the post, because sometimes foam tape can get a bit squishy in the post. So that's something to look forward to in part 3. There's always little tips and tricks. And there you go. That's the front of that card effectively done. I just wanted to do something a little bit on the inside to finish it off. I've got to make sure whereabouts that mechanism is going to sit so that I can roughly centre where I want the sentiment to go once the mechanism is in place. Sorry, my head gets in the way a bit here. I want to make sure that I've got it all lined up properly. The grid marks on the front of the Misty come in really handy for making sure you get things straight. That's where I love the Misty. It's so handy. And I have tried other stamping platforms. I've got a couple of white elephant stamping platforms in my craft room, which I am yet to sell off. So far, the Misty has been the best one in my experience for the way I stamp. It doesn't shift. The lid does not move around. I've tried a couple of the other brands and the lid, for me anyway, the lid tends to wriggle. The Misty so far has been the best one for me. It is a little bit more expensive than the other ones, but for me and the way I stamp, it's paid itself off. But there are other cheaper alternatives out there. But like I said, I have a couple that I am yet to sell off on Marketplace for those that want a bargain. And other people are very happy with the other brands out there. It just depends on how you stamp. And I thought I'd add a little lolly on the inside as well, just to tie everything together. And this one I am doing in real time for you. And I'm using the same colours that I used on the front and just blending them together. And they're not in the same colour families either. So you can see that the different colour families do blend together. And I didn't need a perfect blend because it's meant to look like one of those whirly lollies that you get from those old-fashioned lolly shops. Those lollies that take you days and days to finish. And it's a new stamp set, so I have not yet put the magnet in there. It's on my to-do list. And thanks to the magic of television, I have already cut it out with my little Heffy Doodle mini die cutting machine. And I'm just going to pop that on the inside for a little bit of fun on the inside of the card. And now for the mechanism. So we've put the red liner tape on the two little bits there, and it's going to sit over the fold of the card. So I'm going to remove the backing from one side and then pop some glue on top of the tape. This gives us a little bit of wriggle room because the tape will stick immediately, but I want to be able to have a bit of wriggle room. And we're going to place it just on the right hand side of the fold, right up against the fold, and then fold the card over on top and press down, and that makes it stick. And then we're going to go to the other side, peel off the backing paper, apply glue, and then fold the card straight down and burnish well. Now you can do this before you decorate the card too. If you're going to do a lot of embellishing on the card, I'll do that first. And there you go. And you can see it doesn't add a lot of bulk to the card, so you can still post it. And there the gift card sits in there nicely. And it's done. It sits nice and flush inside. Now this one I'm going to show you how I did the flowers. It's with a stamp set from Altenew. Altenew is a company in America and they specialise in flower sets, in multi-layer flower sets. They come with this guide on how to do the stamping and they give you examples on how to do the stamping as well. They're very, very clever in how they do it. You get an outline stamp and then you get several different layer stamps. Some come with 2, some come with 3, and some of them come with even more different layers for each individual flower. And generally you stamp each layer with a different colour, whether it's within the same colour family or a different colour completely. It's completely up to you. I show you 2 different things in this video where I do the same colour family, and I also show you tone on tone, so the same colour stamped repeatedly and how that looks. Once you get the hang of this particular style of stamp, it's actually quite therapeutic. I wouldn't say easy, but it's not hard. You do need a little bit of stamping experience to be able to do it, and a bit of experience using dye inks. You do need to use dye inks because you need a fast drying ink in order to use them. In this video, I've used a mix of Altenew inks and LawnFawn inks. In upcoming videos, I will show you different brand inks as well and how they react. So the first layer, you need to use a very fast drying, crisp ink. I've used a Versafine black Onyx ink here because it gives a very crisp black line. Here I would not use the Memento Tuxedo because it doesn't give as crisp a finish. The Versafine gives a beautiful crisp finish here. So it's my go-to. You don't have to do this step. If you don't like the black outline, you don't have to do this step. You can play around with this sort of stamp set and just go on and start at the next step, which is the solid colour image, which is the one I'm going to do now. So this one provides the base colour, which is the main colour of the flower or the leaf. Now with the dye inks, they need a little bit of time to absorb into your cardstock. So the type of cardstock you use is important here as well. I've used Nina 80-pound cardstock. So you do need to use a little bit of a better quality cardstock. And you need to let the ink, give it time to seep into there. So this leaf uses 2 different colours, and I'm going to use LawnFawn, freshly cut grass and Jalapeno. And when I say that it needs a little bit of time to seep in, I have tried just pressing it down and lifting it up, and it gives a bit of a splotchy effect, which is what dye ink does. And I've also tried just holding it there just for, a few seconds and then lifting it up. Gives a much better impression. And the longer you let it sit in the paper, the better it develops. So over the process of me doing this video, the colour actually changes as it sets into the cardstock. So now I'm going to do the second colour, and the guide shows you how to place it on the stamped image. But also you can tell, once you've got the stamp on there, you can tell how to place it. So I'm just going to pop the jalapeno colour on now. So this is using the two different colours within the same colour family. And this shows the lows and the highs on the leaf. So that's what that looks like. And as this sets into the cardstock, the colours develop. So it doesn't look like that exactly once it's completely dry. It does settle. So this little flower again is only 2 passes of colour. And I'm going to go into the Altenew colours here. And I'm going to use the Sunray as the first colour. And then I'm going to go on to the Chamomile as the second colour. And here you just need to experiment with your colours as well. I found some colours settle into the cardstock better than other colours. Purple I found sometimes needs actually 2 passes. At least with the purple that I have, it didn't settle at all on the first pass. It actually needed 2 passes to settle. And that's where having a misty comes in very, very handy, because you have to stamp it in the exact same spot. Whereas if you do it on an acrylic block, it's very difficult to get it in that exact same spot. So now I'm going to go in with the Chamomile colour once I pick up the third stamp and position it. And the Chamomile is going to pick up the darker portions of the petals. And you can go for a completely different colour here, because some flowers have, like the two-tone roses. I've got a rose in my garden that is pink and yellow in the same petal. So you don't have to do within the same colour family at all. And now we're doing the centre, which they've got as 2 different colours. Again, you don't have to do 2 different colours. And I've gone for Snapdragon and Marigold. These are the ones I find the trickiest to line up, especially when I'm doing the video, because I can't put my head right over the top without getting in the way of the camera. So it is a little bit tricky. But the beauty is it doesn't really matter. You can just stamp over it again. It's the centre of a flower. Who cares if some pollen goes astray in the centre of a flower? It really doesn't matter. There's no mistakes. And no one is going to look that closely. Although I am being a little bit fussy here, because I had a funny feeling I did have it in the wrong spot, but I was just being too fussy. And I don't think I've mentioned, but all I do to clean my stamps is a microfiber cloth, just with plain water. I don't use stamp cleaner. And if a stamp ink does stain my stamps, I don't worry about it. Stamps are meant to be used As long as it doesn't transfer onto my next ink pad, I don't worry. I'm back to LawnFawn now, and I'm using Wild Rose. Now with this one, I'm going to show you what using the same ink pad looks like when I go to doing tone on tone. This one actually looks really pretty tone on tone, this colour. So I'm just letting the ink seep in. It is a bit of a larger image, so I'm letting it seep in really well. And there is meant to be those white vacant spots in there. That is part of the stamp. They're the highlights of the flower. And make sure that you put the stamp back on correctly onto its backing sheet. So I'm on to the next stamp now. And I'm using the same colour ink pad. So the Wild Rose again. Now because it's tone on tone that I'm doing, I need to stamp it twice, at least twice. Because it will look dark the first time you stamp it. But remember what I said, dye ink settles. So that first impression there will settle to be the same colour or very, very light. So you need to stamp it again. And even this second impression, it will look really dark when I first do it. But well and truly after this video had finished, it had settled down to just be one tone above the original stamped base colour. That's how much the ink, dye ink settles. So don't trust what it first gives you. Dye ink settles into the paper. But that's tone on tone. So that's another alternative. You don't have to have all the colours in the same colour family. You can just continue to stamp with the same ink, just repeatedly stamp it. So now I'm going to do the last one in that one. And I'm going to use chili pepper. Now you could use the Wild Rose again and stamp it about 4 times. But I'm just going to go straight for a chili pepper. And then we need to do the centres. And again, don't get too hung up on where these go. And if you find that you're not good at doing the centres, there is absolutely nothing wrong with getting out your pencils, your Tombow markers, watercolour markers, Copics, and colouring the centres in. Nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, it's probably going to be quicker. I probably should do that actually, because I'm terrible at doing the stamping the centres, I must say. It probably would be much quicker because you'd actually be more accurate. At least I would be. Yeah, food for thought there. I think I might do that. Because then you could really mix up the colours as well. Or you could even emboss the centres and have raised. Yeah. That's another thought. You could do a whole lot, actually. But yeah, so these flower kits from Altenew are great. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned this particular flower set is called Wispy Joy. Yeah, see, I wasn't perfect. Doesn't matter. So these are ones I prepared earlier. Now this technique here, if you're like me and don't own all the embossing folders in the world, because who does? Did you know that you can emboss stencils? Now, I used to be a cake decorator, so I have oodles and oodles of stencils from my cake decorating days. And did you know you can cut up stencils? You can emboss stencils. So with my Spellbinders platform, you have the platform, the rubber mat that it comes with. What I found best is you pop your rubber mat on top of your platform, then your card, then your stencil, then the embossing platform that it comes with. Now, it's up to you to trial and test and see if this works for you or not. The card I'm using is, I think it was about 176 GSM, roughly. I think that's around about £80, I'm not sure. But look at the results there, going backwards and forwards, so 3 times through the machine, and that's just using a stencil. So go through your supplies, have a play. Alrighty, so the mechanism for a top fold card. The measurements you'll need is a 3" by 4 1/4, scored at a 1/2 inch, 1 1/2 inch, and 2 1/2 inch. So the scoring is the same. It's just the actual measurement of the piece of card itself is different to match the measurement of your top fold card. We do a mountain fold and 2 valley folds. And then you can either die cut it out or use a knife and a ruler. I'm going to pop the measurements up on the screen, and I've got both measurements for both styles of card. So I'll let you either screenshot that or just pause it here so you can write it down. But the cut needs to be 3 1/2 inches long or 9 centimetres. Again, we use a metal edged ruler, not a plastic ruler, or you might cut into your plastic ruler. Okay, that's the little mechanism. So your top fold card, it's the normal measurements, 11 inches by 4 1/4, and then you score it in half at 5 1/2 inches. And then because my card is, I think I've used a textured card here, I'm putting a white insert in, which is 4 by 4 3/4, because I needed to allow room for that mechanism to sit. So I'm putting the white panel at the base of the card to allow room up the top for the mechanism. And so my panel for the front there, that's the embossed panel that I did. I want it to be raised up off the front of the card. So rather than using foam tape, I've just grabbed some scrap card and I'm going to glue them together. I think I've got 3 scrap card there. Glue them together. I'm going to glue that to the base of my embossed panel so that it's sturdy enough to go through the mail. Now these scrap bits of white card, they are leftover bits from when I do my swatching. And my embossed panel there is 5 inches by 4 3/4. So I keep all my leftover bits from when I do swatching and when I do all the white bits of card that go behind my stamps and dies. I keep all of those leftover bits. And that's what I use for my sentiment strips, the backings of my sentiment strips and the backings for doing this sort of thing. They come in handy all the time. I know it's hard to tell, but that is the embossed panel. Making sure I've got it on the front rather than on the back, because I've done that before. I'm sure everyone has. And I'm going to fast forward. I think it's this next bit I'm going to fast forward because flower arranging is not my forte. Even in cake decorating, it took me ages to fluff around with the flowers. So I'm going to use a mixture of glue and double-sided foam dots and a mixture of loft in foam dots. So these ones are 1 millimetre high and I'll be using other ones that are 2 millimetres high so that you have different elevations of how high the flowers and leaves sit. And the leaves that are sticking off the edge, don't worry about those for the moment. I'll show you what we do with those. They don't go to waste. So these are the 2 millimetre high foam dots because I want that flower to sit up a little bit higher. But it starts off, some of it is lower, some of it's higher. Now I've only found the 1 millimetre high ones from Snazzy Scrappin'. I haven't found them from anywhere else, or good quality ones from anywhere else. Okay, those little leaves, trim them off, and we're going to stick it there in the corner. So it doesn't go to waste, and we didn't have to make a whole new leaf. So this one I haven't put a sentiment on because I don't know yet what I'm doing this one for. But let's get to the mechanism. So you can see with this one there's not much room on the edges. So we're just going to use just one piece of the red liner tape which fits nicely in there because it's 1/4 of an inch. So we just go down to the score line. So from the center score line to the next score line. And then we do after the score line. So we do the base that's going to be sticking to the actual card. So just remove those, the two little ones, so that we can close it up. And then you'll see those other two are for where we stick it on the card. So remove one, add some glue so we've got a little bit of wriggle room. And then add it to just this side, the right-hand side of the fold, and then fold, making sure it's even with both sides, fold the card down. This one probably would have been easier if I'd have done it before I stacked everything on top. And then repeat for the other side. And then fold down. And then burnish really well. And there you go. Done. And using the same colour as the card, it's not really noticeable. And it goes nice and flat. So that's these ones done. So that's part 2 done. And this is coming up in part 3. I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe. See you guys.